By 327 BC, Alexander the Great had dismantled the Persian Empire. He controlled the largest contiguous territory in human history, and he looked further east with unchecked ambition. His strategy rested on a massive geographic error. Greek maps of the time suggested the edge of the world was only 1,000 kilometers away, making the Indus Valley look like a simple mopping-up operation of former Persian provinces. That assumption disappeared in the Kofun, Swat, and Buner valleys. Instead of an easy sweep, the army pushed into steep, restrictive terrain, where local clans used the geography to choke off the Macedonian advance. Alexander had built a military machine for the open plains of the West. It was not designed for the vertical, tribal realities of the Indian subcontinent. Resistance coalesced at a high fortress called Ornos. Fleeing defenders gathered on the heights, creating a strategic pressure point that sat directly above Alexander's supply lines. The defenders held a near-perfect position. The fortress was perched on a mountain spur, separated from the Macedonian approach by a deep, impassable ravine. Macedonians literally moved the earth, building a massive mound across the ravine, layer by layer. With siege engines in range, the final vertical assault began. Under heavy fire, troops hauled themselves up the rock face using ropes, breaching the summit and slaughtering the fleeing defenders. Alexander secured the heights, but the grueling engineering and extreme physical toll of Ornos set a grim, exhausting tone for the campaign ahead. In July 326 BC, the army pushed into the Punjab. At the banks of the Hydaspes River, they found King Porus waiting with a force specifically equipped to counter Greek tactics. The Macedonian phalanx relied on a wall of overlapping shields and long spears, a formation that was virtually impenetrable from the front in traditional combat. To break that wall, Porus deployed a weapon the Macedonians were not prepared to handle, a front line of highly trained war elephants. Greek accounts describe the elephants goring soldiers through their breastplates and lifting others with their trunks to dash them against the ground. The animals trampled infantry formations and terrified the Macedonian horses, rendering the cavalry useless. Alexander eventually won through a complex river crossing and a flanking maneuver, but the victory was his costliest yet. He took a dart to the shoulder and lost his legendary horse, Bucephalus. While Alexander held the field, the engagement proved his formations were not untouchable. The men who survived returned to camp deeply shaken by the scale of the carnage. After the Hydaspes, the army was in a state of psychological collapse. They were battered by the monsoon, plagued by snake bites, and increasingly homesick. Their fear grew as they heard reports of the Ganges River further east. Beyond it lay the Nanda and Ganga Radai empires, nations that had never been conquered. The intelligence was terrifying. While Porus had nearly broken them with 200 elephants, rumors suggested the Eastern empires possessed as many as 6,000 fighting animals, well-trained and equipped for war. Facing a force 20 times larger than the one that had just inflicted their highest casualties was a prospect the rank-and-file simply could not accept. The march ended at the Hyphasis River. It was the geographic limit of Alexander's ambition and the final breaking point for his men. The most successful army in history staged a full-scale mutiny. They refused to cross the river, choosing to stand their ground against their own king rather than face another Indian army. General Conus pleaded with Alexander, arguing that the men had given everything they had, that they were too broken and too terrified of the eastern elephants to continue. Alexander retreated to his tent for 3 days, hoping the men would change their minds. When they didn't, he was forced to yield. He ordered the army to turn back. Alexander the Great was not stopped by a battlefield defeat, but by the total exhaustion of human endurance within his own ranks. The path home was just as violent as the invasion. During the Malian campaign, the army's fury over their situation boiled over into a series of massacres. Alexander himself was nearly killed after leaping into a citadel alone, taking an arrow through his chest that punctured his lung. His surgeon managed to save him, but the injury took a permanent toll. To reach Persia, Alexander led a large contingent through the Gedrosian Desert. In the extreme heat and barren salt flats, Thousands of soldiers who had survived years of combat died of starvation and thirst. Within a few years of the retreat, a local leader named Chandragupta Maurya founded the Maurya Empire and swiftly reclaimed all the territories the Macedonians had fought to take. The Indian campaign resulted in no lasting conquest. It was a fleeting, brutal moment where Alexander's unchecked ambition finally collided with the reality of the world.